Because it's so easy. These things are created to fill up our dopamine surges. And there has been data and there have been now documentaries on it. And we have to be willing to have that uncomfortable conversation that social media is not social life.
Right. 100%. And if we're going to set boundaries around it, we have to actually like have an honest conversation with ourselves about what boundaries look like. Now on your phone, you can set timers and you can set, my timer will pop up after I've been on social media so long, get off social media. I've had clients do that and they're like, and every time that pops up, I just say ignore and then I stay on it. That's not going to be the timer for you. If a timer works, maybe you need an in your face timer. Maybe you need to, have replacement strategies, like you said, of texting a friend, right? We need to start creating other habits and building our toolbox full of other tools. Again, there might be an opportunity where it serves you, but I guarantee you're hitting that button mindlessly. You don't even realize it. Sometimes I have to delete my app, right? I mean, just because I find like, oh, I don't even remember clicking, the Instagram icon, or I told myself I was getting on for work, but I was done with work 15 minutes ago. So we have to be really honest.
And you're like, oh, look at these puppies.
And I'm like, what have I been doing for the last, like I've been in a vortex. So
yes, it's so like, I mean, I am so honest about it because it's so easy to just like realize you were there for hours on end. The funny thing is that when I started my community, I mean, I still have a personal Instagram and personal Facebook. I feel like I'm more on social media present, but when I look at my time, I'm actually there less as far as time because there is intention behind when I'm showing up to connect with my audience, to, respond to messages. And then I'm like, oh, let me scroll. But if I go on TikTok, oh, it's a time suck. So then I'm like, it's so easy for you to do unintentional passive entertainment than it is for you to show up and I could be creating a post. I actually recently was listening to something about creating content versus consuming, and it's so easy to just be like, oh, let me just scroll. But when I've been more intentional about, oh, look what Jess posted, like, oh, this gives me room for pause and it also gives me an idea for a Facebook live that I'm going to be doing, then I'm actually showing up in service.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And tapping into two different aspects of myself, which is creating and consuming.
I love that. And I mean, when I talk to clients about meeting their own needs and participating in self-care, 101 of that is intention over effort, right? And we talk about that because I don't want them to think it's a lot of time or effort or the things that we've discussed. But that goes with asking ourselves, is social media consumption self-care for us right now? If you're intentionally going on, if you have accounts that you follow that make you feel good, or you're connecting with others, if there's purpose behind it, then it might be self-care. You're also probably not going to spend a lot of time on there. If it's unintentional, mindless, then it's probably not self-care. So it doesn't have to require a lot of effort, but it does always become more beneficial when you're intentional with it.
A simple swap for me, actually, because I also feel like the action of scrolling has been to have the Kindle app on my phone. And when I catch myself like, oh, mindless, I'm like, oh, let me read one chapter of this book that I was listening to on Audible, and I can continue in the car when I'm driving home. So they are little things. And I think that one important conversation that we all should be having as moms is really being honest about how we're spending our time and whether that's serving us and serving our families. It's so easy to feel like we're doing the things like, oh yeah, I only go in there for 30 minutes. Like even when people say, oh, I'm only on Facebook for 30 minutes, I'm like, look at your screen time. Because I guarantee you it's way less. And the person that's actually challenged me the most in as far as social media is my husband. He has no social media. He has no interest in Facebook, Instagram, or whatever. And he listens to like all these audiobooks, and we have the same account. And I'm like, how is it that he's listened to all these books and I have barely read one book this week? Because he just is like, I don't have the need to go on there and observe. But then he got into like watching YouTube videos of like gaming. And I'm like, oh, now he's like, oh, I haven't read a book this week. I'm like, I wonder why. So it's actually interesting to see how those things do suck you into passive action.
Yes. And my guess too is, I mean, social media is just one time suck, right? I mean, most people that I know are participating in something that doesn't serve them and could be replaced with something that better serves them, or it serves them a bit, but they don't need to consume it or participate in it in as much as they want or that they're currently doing. So if we just start filling our toolbox with other tools and replacing or supplementing, a lot of the moms I know are like, well, then I'm just going to quit social media. I'm just going to get off. And I'm like, well, how long is that going to last? Right? Is that really sustainable? Is it really necessary? It's kind of like individuals who are going on a diet and they're like, well, I'm just going to, quit sugar and never eat X, Y, and Z again. And it's like, yeah, or could we just start like adding in some healthy habits? Right.
Yeah.
So
because you'll be back with a vengeance.
Exactly. Like restriction never works. So, but if we're like, well, instead of social media, I'm going to read a book, that feels like a really nice shift, and it's going to make it more sustainable from a habit perspective.
Yeah. And you're not taking away the thing. You're just kind of moving away slightly for it. I'm Shira Bergbauer, and you're listening to an excerpt from the Stethoscopes to Swaddles podcast. You can listen to the whole episode wherever you get your podcasts, and look out for new episodes out every Monday. You're doing a great job, Mama. I'll see you next week. Bye now.